Hello, Arnab, and thanks for joining us in Scouted by GreyB today. It's very nice to have you here. The first question that come to my mind when I read about Mestastop, why metastasis? This specific. There are a lot of companies, a lot of startups coming up, which are coming up with different approaches to cure or find new diagnostic methods to cure cancer. So I was very curious about Mestastop solution and the platforms you have developed.
Sure.
So can you tell
Thanks,
me a little
Thomas,
bit
for
about
having me here
what
today.
Mestastop is doing
So,
and why you have approached
first of all,
picked this specific
sorry
approach?
about this name. It sounds a bit of a tongue twister, Metastop, because we want to stop metastasis. And ME comes from meta and then STA from stasis, so Metastop. We could have kept it Metastop, but we thought
Yeah,
since the biology of metastasis is so complex, we should not give such a simple name. Why metastasis? Historically speaking,
I think it makes perfect
when you
sense.
look
The
back
name
at
is very
cancer,
nice.
and my training is a parasitologist, PhD, postdoc, but once I returned to India in 2009, I have been working on cancer biology, mostly in drug discovery. So you can say I have spent around 16 years in cancer drug discovery. And over the first 6 to 7 years, I realized that cancer is an evolutionary disease where no matter what treatments you are coming up with, cancer cells will change, that is, mutate. And like Darwinian philosophy, they will select for the best mutation. Survival of the fittest. So, in a way, cancer cells are growing and eventually they will kill the body in which it grows. And whatever treatments have come out, so therefore works for only 4 to 6 months, not more than that. And these are for cancers that have spread. So, this spreading process is called metastasis. When the cancer has not spread, treatment that we give them is radiotherapy, chemotherapy, and of course surgery. We take out the tumor, and this is globally accepted. This is the first line of treatment. But even that, after that, 40% of the patients will come back with spread cancer, that is metastasis. And when metastasis happens, all these treatments they can just increase survival by an average of 3.5 months. So once metastasis takes place, it is called the end game. You can't actually cure the patient. It's just a matter of time, but the inevitable is going to happen. Our start point was we did not want to treat a patient in which metastasis has happened, where the tumor has already spread, because then you cannot reverse it. So our goal was to take primary tumor patients who are undergoing radiotherapy, chemotherapy, and surgery and treat them with an additional drug that will delay or prevent metastasis in an ideal setting. Now you might question me, but there are so many drugs also there in the primary setting. So, to answer that, I will put it simply. As I said, tumor is all about growth, right? Cells are growing. But metastasis is all about movement. That is, some cells, instead of growing in the primary tumor, are moving out from that primary tumor, moving through the body, and then going somewhere else and sitting and hiding in that place. And once they get an opportunity, they start growing back. And once they start growing back, the full process is called metastasis. So obviously, the treating of the primary tumor patients, if that was 100%, none of these primary patients will ever develop metastasis. And then eventually cancer will get cured. But why do, even after chemotherapy, patients go back doing scans every 6 months, every 3 months, every year? Because cancer can come back. That uncertainty is there. And there is no treatment as of today to stop coming
Mhm.
a cancer from coming back. So that is the space we are looking at, because 90% of cancer deaths are due to metastasis. So unless and until we can prevent metastasis, cancer cannot be cured. And that's a very bold
Mhm.
statement. And we are not claiming we are trying to cure cancer, because that's like a Nobel laureate, right? But having said that, baby steps, we will like to delay metastasis for at least 2 years, 3 years, right? And then once we are successful there, we will take it longer. So this is in nutshell why we targeted and approached metastasis.
Oh, this is very brief. Thank you for giving me so many details about it. So I understand, and yes, you are right. 90% of the deaths when I was doing research, I also found that
Yes.
like majority of cancer death happen because cancer spreads to other parts and it goes undetected when it spreads. It only comes to light, when it has already done the damage which cannot be reversed. So what I understand is basically you want to prevent that process
Correct.
of spreading,
Correct.
and if
Correct.
it is spreading, you have a platform which can detect.
Biopharma acknowledged that, and they have tried delay metastasis in clinical settings. So between 2000 and 2010, there were at least 20 clinical trials against targets which people thought was relevant for metastasis. So in these clinical trials, what was done was the surgery was done, tumor was taken out along with chemo and radiotherapy. This extra treatment, we call it adjuvant setting. This treatment was given to delay metastasis. But unfortunately, all of these clinical trials failed. And by 2010, something called immunotherapy became big because the first approvals happened in 2010 in immunotherapy. So obviously, pharma has this herd mentality. Something is not working versus something is working. You will of course go there which is working. So metastasis research got deprioritized. So when we wanted to work on metastasis, our first question was, do we understand why biopharma had failed in clinical trials? In order to doing that research, we realized that their focus was trying to stop cells from moving out of the body. Okay, but as you said, cancer can go undetected for a long time. So by the time I am trying to stop cells from moving out of the body, there's a 99% probability that some cells have already moved out, traveled through the body and hiding in some other part of the body. So all these treatments, even if they're successful in stopping cells from moving out of the body, they won't be able to kill those cells that have already moved out and hiding somewhere else. For us, it was very important to understand what is that step where we can interfere. Definitely, this will be downstream of that moving out. But after moving out, they're going through the body, traveling through the blood vessels, and then hiding in a secondary place. So in that secondary area, when these tumor cells have moved out, can we stop them from growing back? So we are not trying to stop them from moving, we are assuming they have already moved out. So our goal is to stopping them from growing back into a tumor cell into the secondary column. So this was the hypothesis, but we needed to understand if this hypothesis is relevant in patient settings, because a hypothesis is a hypothesis, and we can do basic research, but unless we understand the relevance in terms of patient data, we will not be successful. So what we did, now coming to the platform, what we did, we hypothesized that let us break metastasis into 30 steps. So the first chunk of steps was the dissemination where cells are moving out. Second chunk of steps were the travel part where cells are moving through the blood, surviving. Then the third part was adaptation, where few cells have moved into the secondary tissue. What it takes to them for them to survive in that hostile foreign environment and try to go back into successful metastasis. So we broke metastasis into this 30 steps, and we created this anti-metastasis platform on the bench, which means step 1 to 30 is creating a metastasis platform on the bench, trying to understand metastasis biology. Then what we did, we directly went to the hospitals, took patients' tumor samples. These patients have only primary tumor, no metastasis. So surgery done, these samples are coming to us. We isolated, purify the tumor cells and use these tumor cells to run on our platform. So each patient's tumor cell will give us 30 sets of biology data. And we will follow up with these patients for at least 3 years, trying to see how many of these patients develop metastasis. Yes and no. So after 3 years, what we did, we tried to correlate all the biology data and also the clinical data of survival metastasis, trying to understand which biology data can explain why out of 52 patients, 18 patients developed metastasis and 34 patients did not develop metastasis. For this, we used machine learning algorithms because by naked eye understanding, you can't correlate so much data. So this helped us understand what can be the critical rate limiting steps of metastasis, and we could successfully show that adaptation will played a 55% role or a 0.55 weightage among a one weight. So compared to dissemination and travel, adaptation played a critical role. So then what we did, we went into adaptation biology, identified targets that plays a critical role in adaptation, and we started drug discovery programs on that. So this creation of metastasis biology on the bench is one platform. using the patient data and using AI based machine learning. That is the second platform. And once in drug discovery, you need to screen a lot of molecules, right? One of the big challenge in metastasis research was an animal model where you will show that metastasis is effectively being delayed by a small molecule or a large molecule would take 4 to 6 months. So in terms of discovery timelines, this is a huge drawback because we are spending a lot of time, which means a lot of money, right? So what we did, we created a proprietary animal model where metastasis would be observed in only 6 weeks. So 6 months to 6 weeks, we were successfully able to cut down the timelines. So now what we have, based on patient data, we understand what can be the key steps of metastasis, and based on that data, we have gone into drug discovery. Drug discovery, of course, we will do experiments on the bench, and then finally we will go into this novel animal model. And today where we are, we have already identified new molecules that completely inhibits and delays metastasis in the animal model. So this is the application of the platform. The same platform is also being used to identify. Say, if you remember, I said of 100 patients, 40 will have metastasis, 60 will not. Right? So I don't want to treat all 100 patients with this medicine. I need to treat specifically those 40 patients. How will I do that?
Yeah.
So that is where we are also developing a companion diagnostics where we will take the patient's tumor and we will be able to say, okay, this patient has a high probability of metastasis. So he should be given this treatment. So that is the companion diagnostics. So we have created three platforms. Application is in drug discovery and in companion
Mhm.
diagnostics.
This is all very interesting, and I can see how well you've broken down the entire process, and even each step is also further broken down. The 30-step process in the first platform that you mentioned, and so I don't know what I'm getting is that this from identification to coming up with a targeted drug, or to coming up with target areas where we can intervene, or we can do some
Yes.
diagnosis. So all of these are, since these are independent system, these can be used by different
Correct, correct.
organization or
But having
different
said that,
medical
of course,
research facilities.
you can understand what we have done is research, right? But end of the day, we are a business. So research won't help us make
Hmm.
money. But the objective was to do it the right way. And in order to do it the right way, we needed to understand the right science. So that is why we have spent 5 plus years
Hmm.
without making a single penny, but spending a lot of money on R&D, because good science can only be based on a good platform. We can't hope and wish to get lucky. Then we are not doing being good scientists. So now that the platform is in
Yeah.
space, we are now doing our discovery research. So the business model is we will take this molecule, go to pharma in US and Europe, and we will sell this molecule, sell these targets. In our language, we call it out licensing. Out licensing targets and out licensing platforms, or partnering and collaborating with them to develop novel treatments for
Hmm.
metastasis. So, what we get is, since we have brought the science into this place today with the effort of last 6 years, we are eligible for significant amount of upfront payment that can vary from 5 million to 30 million US dollars, and of course milestone payments
Hmm.
as and when this becomes successful through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and finally gets up. There are so many drugs that are
Hmm.
approved in the west which we cannot afford here in India. My own uncle passed away of prostate cancer, and at that time the best treatment would cost 40 lakhs for a 8 month treatment, and he couldn't afford. How do we help Indian population? I will make money from US and Europe. So for that, what we did is we are repurposing drugs. So there are approved drugs for hypertension, hyperlipidemia, and everything. We have taken a lot of those drugs, tested on our platforms, because now we know what is the most important steps, tested on our platform,
Hmm.
pick the best ones, tested on the animal model, and then we have gone into patient data, actually seeing that
Hmm.
the drugs that we have selected, if taken by cancer patients, have promoted their survival or not. From that, we have identified two drugs, and we are starting a phase 2 and phase 3 clinical trials here in India this year, so that once we are successful, people can buy these drugs at 100 rupees, but it can
Hmm.
delay metastasis in the early adjuvant setting. So we won't be able to make money out of this here in India, but that's not the objective. That's not the reason why we started. Because in that way, as a scientist, you have a satisfaction.
it's very interesting, and it makes me very happy to hear
Absolutely.
what your thought process is behind, basically collecting money and also making sure that your solution is creating impact, it's healing people. Also, and actually I wanted to ask about, but you have already answered it, in which basically
Yes.
phase we are
So I
in
will
terms
tell
of clinical
you,
trials.
there are multiple
So you've already
stages.
mentioned
Phase
that
one
this year
is the
we are
safety
going to
phase.
conduct the final
In this
stages of
case, we are
clinical
bypassing
trials here
phase
in India.
one because these are approved drugs and we are using them at the same dosages at which they were. So we are directly going into phase two. But if this is successful, we can clearly get a very quick approval. And we have a high confidence this will be successful because, as I said, in a 257 retrospective study, these drugs have shown significant improvement in survival with a statistical correlation. We call it p value that is less than 0.0001, which means it's highly significant.
I understand the biology behind this, and I understand where you are in terms of trials, and in I also understand your business model. Basically, who
So,
is your
see, we are
current
a small
potential client?
biotech
Who are
based
you
out
trying
of
to sell, or
India, though
basically
we
take
have a
your solution to?
subsidiary in. See, we
Current
are a small
potential client,
biotech
who are
based
you
out
trying
of
to sell, or
India, though
basically
we
take
have a
your solution to?
subsidiary in the US and also in Europe. But we cannot afford to take it all the way, right, to the clinics and get it approved. At least not today. Maybe 10 years down the line, but not today. So, of course, our clients and potential partners are people in pharma and biotech who are working on oncology. Now, 75% of pharma and biotech works on oncology. So we have a very good client potential. Fortunately or unfortunately, as I said, metastasis research has been deprioritized. So other than 4 or 5 companies, none of these companies are working on metastasis. So if they see that there's a molecule that can complement chemotherapy, radiotherapy, or all the primary lines of treatment that decreases the growth of cancer, and there's our molecule that will delay metastasis, this is a fantastic combination therapy. So this will be our potential partners. So this is a completely a B2B strategy.
And do you see any challenge coming up in growing or expanding basically Metastop's work beyond India, or in for the other countries, or in terms of
Yeah.
making
So
it as a complementary
no, of course,
solution,
challenges
portraying
are
it as
there, but
complementary
without sounding
treatment
arrogant,
to
the
these clinics?
biggest challenge was
So, do
to
you see any challenge coming up?
survive the
Something?
first 3 years. As soon as you say we are trying to understand metastasis biology, no one will invest in you because you don't have a product. You are into R&D, and we don't know when you will come up with the product and the
Hmm.
solution. And people are very scary of deep tech, biotech, especially drug
Hmm.
discovery. How many companies are there doing actually drug discovery in India? Startups, you can count on your fingers. So that was the most challenging
Yeah.
part, and we have survived that. The next 2 years, we have actually shown proof of concept in discovery, diagnostics, and repurposing. So I think the worst is over. Very good market in the US and Europe where our science will get
Hmm.
accepted. And what we have done till date, over the last 3.5 years, we have presented in 15 international conferences our work. So the biggest challenge is to bridge our science with interested partners in US and Europe. So we have a twofold GTM there, go-to-market strategy. Number one is to appoint a highly experienced chief business officer in the US or Europe, who basically who has worked in pharma in the US for 30 years, understands biotech. And number two is, of course, go for FDA IND filing for the two clinical trial prospects that we have here. There's a lot of commercial proposition for this too there because the US and Europe allows a new method of use patent, which is not allowed here in India. So once we file those FDA INDs and we have this G2 market, go to market strategy with the chief business officer, I think he's the face of our science, which is very good and robust. So that's when we start discussions somewhere next year. And since we want to outlicense starting 2027, we are also moving to a new laboratory, a 5,000 square feet own space where we will house our tissue culture, analytical lab, molecular biology, fly biology, animal house, everything. So once these potential partners comes and visits us in India, they will also feel very comfortable and confident that these guys have their own facility, they're doing science the right way, and all our data is electronically recorded, time stamped, and auditable. So from day zero. So that gives everyone, because science is all about data, right? So that gives everyone the confidence that these data are actually perfect, sacrosanct, sacred. There are no issues with this data, and then I think it will happen very organically. So I don't foresee too much challenges because I think the worst is over. Now it should be a smoother ride from here.
Now this is something that I ask a lot of founders, and it's like only for my personal motivation. So what I want to understand is, like, since you're coming, you have a very extensive medical experience, and you have been in this field for a very long time. And now from past 6 years, as you also shared, all a lot of challenges came up when you started Mestastop, and there was, and of course the market conditions were not in your favor because the research on metastasis was really not being pushed and actually being deprioritized. So during all this time, I'm sure you must have gone through a lot of emotions of, maybe this is not going to work, or maybe this is too hard, or maybe you won't find funding. So and every founder goes through a phase like this. So how did you deal with it, and basically how did you still kept on going with it? And now after 5 6 years, I'm very happy to see that you've overcome those challenges. But I just want to understand basically your psychology as a doctor in this space and as an entrepreneur in this space. So how did it work out?
This is completely my opinion, but I think looking at myself in the mirror, a practical person should not become a founder. Somebody who is a dreamer and probably illusionist should become a founder because it was completely uncertain. But I would not think as to what if this does not work, because I always had that confidence, that self belief that we are doing something right. I don't know how it came, but I always had that confidence. So even when during the roughest times, we would try to take each day at a time. Of course, I was disappointed, I was depressed, I was angry, I was frustrated. I'm not saying those emotions were not there. I was able to channel them, all those emotions, and probably into my anger and determination, and try to keep the dream alive, that what we are doing is meaningful and one day it will have impact, right? So I think founders, as a founder, one needs to be have a lot of confidence in themselves, be resilient, and no matter what everybody else says, of course, take feedback and learn, because as you rightly pointed out, I was more of a scientist, I was not a businessman, I was not an entrepreneur. So you just learn along the way. So as long as you are humble, open to learning along the way, but keeping your self belief, I think it is very possible to sustain yourself. It is very possible. Of course, with today, when you look at social media and all, the founders are being very glamorized, right? But there's no glamour in being a founder. There's a lot of hard work, sleepless nights, and a lot of people will not take you seriously, will ridicule you. So there's no glamour in being a founder. So don't try to become a founder because you want to be somebody who everybody knows and go into Shark Tank. Be a founder only if you believe in something, really believe in something, and nobody else is doing that, and you want to give it a shot. And if that determination, that meaning is there, the cause is there, then I think all obstacles can be uh, uh, taken over.
So this is the formula to succeed, that you need to believe in the solution that you're working, and you need to be like confident enough to overcome all these challenges because of that belief, and you need to just keep going.
Exactly. Self belief. I would say self belief is very important. And of course, team and everything. But that for I would not, it's not Arnab. Arnab is not only Mr. Stop. I have a team of 16 people now, some of them working for 4 or 5 years, right? So Mr. Stop would not have been possible without them. But what I'm trying to say is if I crack, right, then the team will crack. So the founder need to stay strong.
With that, Arnab, we are at the end of our interview. It was really amazing talking to you, and I got to know so much about cancer research, metastasis, and all the solutions we are bringing in. So, thank you for being with me here. And I think, yeah, that was the end of the interview.
Thank you. Thank you, Shabazz, for having me here. Always a pleasure to talk about Mr. Stop. It's my baby. So every father, every dad likes to talk about their children. So yeah, my pleasure.